Hey, this is Daryl Henry with Insurance for Entrepreneurs, and this video is why do I need cyber insurance? What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to go through three different high-profile cyber events that happened in the last couple of years and use that to help you understand how it may impact your business. I'll probably also throw in some other stories from my personal life. So I'm going through a blog post I wrote a couple of years ago. I'm going to put the article in my show notes if you want to read the blog post. So the first event that I reference all the time is the Minneapolis public school system data breach. And what happened in this event is cyber threat actors the got into the system of the Minneapolis public school system. And they said, "Hey, look, either give us $1 million or we're going to lock everything up. And we're going to share all this data." And the Minneapolis public school system said, "That's okay. We don't negotiate with terrorists." And the cyber threat actors said, "Fine by us." And what they did was they took all the data, they took all the counseling records, all the accusations of abuse, they took all the counseling sessions, and they made it all public. And there was articles in newspapers about families saying, "Please make this stop, make it go away." And so what the cyber threat actors did was they took information that maybe didn't have a dollar value attached to it, because that was the one thing I had to reframe after reading these stories and reading these articles. I always thought about data as credit cards, date of birth, driver's license numbers, things that threat actors would take and then sell on the internet. But that's not always what they're going after. Sometimes what they're going after is emotionally sensitive data. So, or private data. So, in schools and mental health, this is counseling sessions. This is talking to counselors about, "I was abused, I was bullied, I'm thinking about suicide." That's what goes on in those sessions. But I think you can take this same idea and you can talk about it in the context of a law firm or an accounting office or a bookkeeping office where you have all this personal information, this really, really sensitive data of your clients that, if it was made public, could really damage them. And that's the concept, is that your data that can be stolen, that cyber threat actors are trying to steal all the time, isn't just about credit cards. It's about what is the damage that could be caused, both mental anguish and emotional anguish and business loss, if it were to be made public. So that's reason number one why you need to be thinking about cyber insurance. And that's the first story that I always go to. So the second story that I like to refer back to is when the casinos in Las Vegas were breached. Caesars Casino. Caesars paid $15 million for a data breach ransom. It's a ton of money, right? And when I read that story and when I was following it, one of my first questions was, you would think that casinos would have their cybersecurity on lockdown. Like, they have money, they have credit cards, they have all the things that you would be thinking would be very, very valuable. Of course, they're going to have everything on lockdown, right? Well, what I learned from this story is that your number one vulnerability in a cyber environment is your people. The way that the threat actors got into their system was that they called into the outsourced IT help desk and pretended to be an employee to get that needed to reset their password. And the outsourced IT help desk let the cyber threat actors into the environment, and they locked everything up. And Caesar said, "Okay, we can't risk the fallout that may happen if we don't pay." So they went ahead and paid the ransom, and it cost them $15 million. Now, and I tell that story because very commonly when I talk about cyber insurance, people will tell me, "Nah, this is never going to happen to me. We got all the best people, we got all the best security. My managed IT person has this on lockdown." And what I want to remind people is that It's not the IT systems that are your number one vulnerability. It is your people. And your people still may do something silly, even if all your processes are immaculate. So, the third news story that I like to talk about is it ties back to that same cyber event. Caesars paid the ransom. MGM said, "We don't negotiate with terrorists," and refused to pay the ransom. And so, what did the cyber threat actors do? They shut everything down. Everything. It was so bad that bars and restaurants on the same block had to accept cash payments because they could not accept credit card payments. And it was such a terrible event that it had hundreds of $1 million impact on the company. They were reporting about it when they did their quarterly earnings call. It was that big and that severe. And so, how do I tie this back to normal people and small to medium sized businesses? It's that when you're thinking about a cyber attack, it is not just paying for the damages to somebody else. It's not just the mental anguish from the cyber breach, like in the Minneapolis public school system. It's not just that you're going to have to pay a ransom. It's that if you are shut down, if your systems are shut down, how are you going to continue business? How are you going to continue operating? So, for example, if you are a doctor's office and you can't access medical records, how are you going to work with patients? How are you going to do that? If you are a construction firm and you rely on your project management software and you don't know how to tell people where to go and where you're at in a project without that software, how are you going to continue to operate? If you can't invoice, if you can't bill, what are you going to lose? What is it going to cost you as an organization while your systems are down? Because you can get that covered under your cyber policy, but you need to be thinking about it. You also need to be thinking about what your continuation plan looks like. You need to be thinking about what's going to happen. How are you going to respond if you do have a cyber threat attack? This all has to be part of what you're considering. So that's the third news story. The fourth one I'm going to throw in that is not in the blog post, but it just happened recently in my local community is the local hospital was breached. And they were having to redirect patients to other hospitals in the community because they could not accept patients. What I want people to learn from that event is that cyber threat actors are specifically targeting infrastructure organizations. Like they are looking for organizations that they know people will be seriously hurt or die if they cannot continue operations. It's a fact, it's a reality. There's some organizations that make this their total business because they know the local hospital, if they can't take patients, people will die, which means they're going to be much more likely to pay. They cannot negotiate, they cannot stall out, they cannot say, we don't negotiate with terrorists because people will die if they do not negotiate with terrorists. So if you're an organization that deals with sensitive situations that it is necessary for infrastructure, you have to understand that you are a high level target to cyber threat actors. All right. If you liked that, if this was helpful for you, hit the like button, subscribe for more videos like this. If you want to learn more about me, I got my website, insuranceforentrepreneurs.net. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening and for watching. Go build something great.